Hey guys, welcome to my channel. This is a part 2 of my nightmare nursing school experience. So yeah, let's just get into it, right? So the first video was more about like things that happened to me on an emotional, mental, physical level. And then some things of, you know, what students were doing, what the instructor was doing. So I guess in this video, I'll just talk on like specific events that went on. So there was multiple times where our instructor would be telling us stories of how she would be working with coworkers. And there was this one incident where a new nurse was hired on and reported another nurse that had been there for years for leaving narcotics and medication out and didn't stay with the patient, because if you are working in nursing, you have to make sure that the time that you record the medication was taken was the time that the patient took the medication, and you stay in the room with the patient while they're taking the medication. So this new nurse comes in, she reports this other nurse who had been there for 10 plus years, and the older nurse got fired because that's a serious medication error, is leaving medication out, especially narcotics, because that's a controlled substance. That's a big no-no. And so my instructor goes like, why didn't you talk to them? Why didn't you help them out? Why didn't you like remind them, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, this was like night shift and this other new nurse was day shift. So she didn't realize the medication was still on the client's table until later on in the day. So of course she's going to report it, because then it's going to be on her. Somebody has to take fault. Somebody has to take accountability. But my instructor was like, no, you should help them out. You shouldn't like take a spoon out of somebody's mouth because the nurse had been there for so long and now she lost her job. Like, no, she should have been doing the right thing, right? What if state was in, right? So it's like, no, you need to hold people accountable. And then there was other stories where my instructor would say she would be working like with a different coworker, and that coworker gave a patient the wrong medication, which could kill a patient. Like that is a serious liability. That's a crime. That's a crime. And then instead of doing all the necessary things and writing out a report, she told my instructor about the nurse that made the error, told my instructor about it, and my instructor didn't report it, and just said, you know, monitor the vitals and blah, blah, blah. And it was basically like letting this nurse get away with this without a nurse's report. No nurse's report was filed. And I was like, why are you telling this to a bunch of students? Like that is a red flag. That is a crime. Like that is serious. Imagine if you're in the hospital, you're suffering, and somebody gives you the wrong medication and doesn't file a report and just continues to monitor and sweeps it under the rug. That is what the fuck. If somebody did that to my family member, sue. I would sue. Like, you're talking about, oh, you shouldn't take the spoon out of somebody's mouth. That's not what you're there for. You're there for the livelihood of a patient. You're there to make sure that they're being looked after, that they're being taken care of. And yes, you could lose your license. Yes, you can go to jail. Something that you're constantly talking about as a professor. Oh, you can go to jail, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's how serious it is. People want to talk about the funny side of nursing and like, oh, you can make a bunch of money and luxury nursing and la-da-da-da-da, bullshit. Like, your life, patient's life is on the line. Your license is on the line every single minute that you clock in and clock out. Like, the time that you're clocked in, your license is on the line because somebody's life is on the line. That's serious. So when my instructor said that, I said, oh, hell no. Also, on that note, the integrity thing, I don't know if I mentioned it on my last video, but my instructor was saying how she doesn't pass students, she doesn't curve grades. Like if you're at a 79, the benchmark was 80%. So if you are at a 79, that's it. You're not getting curved. However, she was saying, oh, my integrity, I'm not going to curve. However, she did curve somebody. They were at a 79. She ended up curving them. I had screenshots of the message between the student and the instructor, how she curved them. That student also ended up being a family member of the administrator. So, so when it comes to nursing, there's a lot of lying. At least in this facility, there was a lot of lying. There was a lot of lack of accountability. There was people that were, I'm just going to say, not caught yet. Because when you're somebody that doesn't follow through with what you say, and you don't hold yourself accountable, you don't hold other people accountable, you sweep things under the rug, you're eventually going to get caught. I've worked with so many administrators. I've worked with so many nursing home, hospital agencies, assisted living facilities, where if somebody wasn't doing the right thing, they just haven't gotten caught yet. There was another incident where one of the students kept going to the front of the class, sitting in the teacher's chair on the teacher's computer, which again is a big no-no, but the teacher wanted to stand at the back of the classroom. She didn't want to sit at the front at the computer. So she put a student there, and she would leave her, the student portal, the teacher portal. She would leave the teacher portal open, which had access to grades, which had access to the tests, which had access to everything. And while the instructor was lecturing, the student would be going through everybody's grades, would be looking at everybody's grades, would be looking at the test questions, would be looking at everything. Because he could pause the screen. The student could pause the screen, and was looking at everyone's grades. And when the instructor realized what was going on, you know what she did the next day? She had everybody take a test, and then she gave it to other students and had us grade it, so we would all know different students' grades to make it look not as bad, and also didn't report the student. There would be disciplinary actions in a legitimate nursing school that actually gave a shit about accountability, that gave a crap about, what was the word? Integrity, right? So I was like, this is a bunch of bullshit. Also, for med-surg and pharmacology, in med-surg I had a 79, right? So that's I had to take a pause. And in pharmacology, in the class, I had an 82%. I passed the school final, but I flunked the pharmacology, we used ATI, I flunked the ATI final. Tell me how, in a class and a school final, together, I get an 82%, but I take the ATI portion and I flunk it. I don't just do semi-okay on it. I flunk it as if I didn't know anything. That means I'm not being prepared. That means that I'm not being taught properly. That means that there's something going on, because how do I have an 82 and I pass the school final, right? I think I had between a 78 and 79 on the school final exam. But then I take the ATI exam and I flunk it as if I don't know a dang thing, right? So after you don't pass 2 classes, you got to take a step back. You got to wait a few months until the new cohort and they're in whatever class you didn't pass. So for me, I had an 82 in pharmacology, but I didn't pass the ATI exam. So I didn't pass the class, even though I passed the class and I passed the school exam. I actually didn't pass it because ATI. I didn't pass that exam. And then in med-surg, I had a 79. And I think on my final, I had a 73. And then the ATI, again, didn't pass the frickin' ATI. And it wasn't by a small portion. It was by a large portion. I'm not being prepared properly. And then also during med-surg, med-surg was a 5-week course. 2 of those weeks, our study tools were shut down. So we couldn't even practice for the state exam. We had access to nothing. So I'm like, how am I supposed to practice questions for the exam if I don't have access to it? And that's when I spoke to the administrator, which I asked to speak to her 3 weeks in advance, but she was like, we don't have to talk till the end of the month. I'm like, lady, I'm at risk of failing another class. And also we had to put up 80% of our tuition payment in like 6 months. This is like a 13-14 week course. The first 6 months, you're paying like 80-90% of the tuition. So I'm like, I've already paid so much money into this portion. I'm not being taught properly. My time is being wasted. I'm being abused. I don't feel safe. All this unnecessary bullshit. There's a lot of games, a lot of lies, a lot of talk, not a lot of walk, lack of accountability, lack of integrity, lack of honesty. And I was just getting beyond frustrated. And so I'm like, I don't think that this fits in with who I am as a person, what I stand for, what I wish to do. And it's just mind-boggling. And I was so disappointed. Because here it was 8 months I spent in this course, 7 to 8 months, near almost 8 months that I spent through all the bullshit, and then only 4 of those months would be accounted for. And then I would have to repay for 2 classes, and then I would have to pay for, because they switched from ATI to HESI, so then I would have to pay another X amount of dollars for HESI, which this is not cheap, guys. I'm not talking like 500, 1,000. I'm talking like big numbers. I'm talking big here. This is nothing like small. And this is also my time, my mental health, my emotional health, my physical health. And then I'm looking at like how much I would make with the benefits when I finish school. And I'm like, this is not worth it. Like, I already make that much with everything that I do now and more than getting this degree. Like, what? I was like, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. And then there would be other instances where we got put into groups, and there was this one girl who kept saying like, oh, Mary, you're so smart, you can like lead, you can like help our study group, you can help the study group, blah blah blah, you can lead, and was like hyping me up while talking shit behind my back. I was like, fake. And this lady was like 40-50 as well. And yeah. And then people in the class were also mad that she and I were studying together. I was like, what the hell did I do? I'm the one that got physically assaulted. I'm the one that's been lied to. And also, one of my clients passed away during this time, like in March time frame. So I was also dealing with that. And you know what my instructor said? She's like, oh, when you work double, you have to pay double in nursing school. Mind you, I was not even working like extra. I was not working extra. I was working part-time. And I was working so because I could still study. And then people in the course would also give up their jobs. They would say like, oh, you can't work. Like, who's going to be paying, $10,000 every semester, $10,000 to $20,000 every like X amount of semesters, like, and not work? What? I was like, y'all want like $20,000 up front in X amount of months, in like 6 months. And then you're telling us we can't work? That we won't be able to pass if we work? And then you're helping other people and curving other people, but you won't help other people? Because, oh, integrity, but yet here's proof of you passing people because they're related to the administrator. But they didn't pass the course because they were at a 79. So, and it's unfair to say like, oh, well, they passed the ATI, but they didn't pass the school exam. They didn't pass the class. Okay, but I did pass the class, but I didn't pass the ATI. So why, what? It was just such shit. It was bullshit. And yeah, I literally had to pray about it for a very long time, and I heard God telling me, like, you do not have to suffer. And I was like, whoa, that I literally, like, sometimes as humans, we choose to suffer. We choose things that, like, for our ego. And I was like, wow, I was actively choosing to suffer. But I also think that, also, I never grew up thinking like I wanted to be a nurse. I was thinking like I want to be a doctor. I want to do something in health. I want to heal. For me, it was really like healing and empowerment and what aligns with me, and the integrity and the accountability and the honesty, right? And all these values. And yeah, just talking to God about it and like just hearing like you don't have to suffer, I was like, whoa. And I've been a caregiver, CNA, med tech, phlebotomy, wound care, EKG. I've done pretty much all of it for 10 years. And here I am trying to get like practical nursing, which, by the way, now I realize was somebody projected that onto me, and I took on that identity in like high school. I grew up wanting to like do YouTube, be creative. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to do like healing, but I wanted to do like my own business, all of that. And yeah, I just, I realized I don't have to suffer. There's other things that happened in the course, in the class, that I probably don't remember now. There was also another time where, there was just little things that I noticed that I would try, like, you know, people that try to get something or try to get ahead. Like if I was trying to get ahead, or if I was trying to get a book, or if I was trying to get access to something, I was always told no. I was always told, no, you gotta wait. But everybody else could have it. Everybody else was allowed to take it. But I was told no. And my instructor did this to me one time over like a textbook. It was like a medication book. And so I went to the class to like grab one, and she was basically like, sit down. I was like, everybody else has one. Why can't I have one? And she was like, oh, I don't know who this is for. I was like, it's obviously for our class. Like, we're in pharmacology. It's obviously for me. I paid for it. And then it was just hilarious to me because I kept thinking like, I'm paying for this. I'm paying for this. Right? And I'm like, this is not what I paid for. I'm not getting the hours. And then also our instructor would literally stop teaching at like 1 o'clock, 1:30. Class doesn't stop till 2, but she would stop teaching at like 1:30. And like, she'll just say, oh, I'm tired of teaching. You guys are exhausting me. Oh, I'm tired. I'm bored. I'm tired. I'm just going to stop teaching. I was like, what? This is not what I paid for. I paid for you to teach me. That's why I'm spending this tuition, to teach me. I was absurd. And then, or literally would stop class at like 1 o'clock and then just have sexual conversations about female, male, everything. Or like tell these stories about how the nursing field is messed up and how they're just sweeping things under the rug and how lives are on the line, and oh well. And if somebody likes you, then great. And if you're at risk for losing your job, well, you're really not, because this person likes you and they're going to back you up. And even if you're legitimately like could kill a patient, they would still back you up. I was like, that's a crime. And here is a professor literally actively admitting this. I was like, I started recording lectures. I'm not posting those. But yeah, I was recording lectures, which you can do. You can legally record lectures, right? To like listen back and everything. But, and the school has been reported to the Board of Nursing so many times. And you know what they say? The administrator says, oh, well, they failed out. Their grades weren't good. So of course they'd be complaining. Of course they wouldn't be happy. Of course they failed out. They weren't getting good grades. Yeah, of course. Like, they take no accountability. And then during the review, when, like, you know, my GPA was on the line, the administrator asked me, like, oh, what's going on at home? How about what's going on at school? How about the fact that y'all are scamming? I'm like, home's fine. Work's fine. I literally lost my patient, but I come into school. I'm expecting to be taught 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., but I'm only getting taught like 3 hours. And then I'm having the rest of the day to figure out the shit myself. Because my teacher's too tired, too bored. We're boring her. And then if I would ask questions, because I'd be asking dumbass questions, because she'd be like, ask questions. And I would be asking dumbass questions that I already knew the answer to like show that I'm participating, that I'm eager to learn, blah, 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 blah. And then it was kind of like an ego battle. Like, she wouldn't remember it off the top of her head. So then she would like start like thinking that I'm like questioning her authority, which I'm like, no, you told us to ask questions. And now I feel like I can't ask questions. It was so frustrating. And it literally triggered my fight and flight. It triggered memories from what I dealt with in childhood. I was getting PTSD. I was having nightmares. And I said, you know what? But thank God that's over, because we're just not doing that. That's not the path that God wants me to be on. Maybe that's not the school God wants me at. So yeah. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. There's probably other things that I forgot to mention, but that was pretty much like a lot of it. And overall, I just felt like disappointed, frustrated, and really sad. Like really, really sad. Because it's like things don't have to be that way. There's standards and rules and things in place, so things aren't this way. But it's like you can't control humans. And people will